everyone. This is Professor Jeff Wilkerson at Luther College talking to you once more about what to look for in the night sky, this time for the week of June 7th. So we're plowing our way almost halfway through the year now. We're going to talk about things to look for in the month of June. We've spent the last several weeks, if you've watched the videos, and I'm sure you have repeatedly, we've spent the last several weeks talking about the stars of Leo. And I really tried hard to keep that string alive. I thought, let's just spend the next 4 months talking about the stars of Leo. But I thought maybe then after a while, I thought, let's move on and talk about some other things. And so we're going to actually switch to the summer triangle a little bit, but we're just going to use the summer triangle to help us find a couple other objects in the sky that we'd like to look for. We'll come back to the summer triangle, just as we did the stars of Leo. We'll probably go back and talk about Leo, Virgo region of the sky one or two more times here. But we may not. Sometimes we get distracted and we move on to other things. But we'll probably come back to the summer triangle, use it as a marker. They're the easiest stars to see in summer, especially late summer. But they really, we can use them as guide stars to help us find a lot of things. And they're interesting stars in and of their own right to talk about. So we'll return to this region of the sky repeatedly, just as we did the Leo region and still will the Leo Virgo region of the sky. But for right now, these three really bright stars. We'll talk about angles and magnitudes like we did the last couple of weeks. So you can go back and review those videos where we talk about the magnitude system last week, for example, if you want to think about that. And as we're talking about these stars, we have three really bright stars: Deneb, Vega, and Altair form what we call the summer triangle. These stars are rising into the sky well as it gets dark tonight. They're not directly overhead. They haven't made it to the north-south line. Remember, we call that the meridian line, the north-south line that passes directly overhead, goes to the zenith point, the point that's directly overhead. But they haven't made it there yet by the time it gets good and dark. So you'll still have to look east, rising into the sky, to see these stars. Deneb and Vega rise, I think for me, they rise about 5 p.m., so it's still light for a long time after 5 p.m. right now as we head into summer. So they're well up into the sky by the time it gets dark. Altair rises quite a bit later. It's further south and further west. So for those of us at mid-northern latitudes, that means it's it's in the sky less time than these two stars are. So the summer triangle stars, it's a big triangle overhead. Deneb and Vega, the two brightest, Vega is the brightest star of the triangle and is the brightest star of the summer sky. And Deneb is a little bit fainter than Altair. All of these are, Vega's close to a 0th magnitude star. If you remember the magnitude system we talked about last time, Deneb's a little fainter than 1st magnitude, and Altair's a little brighter than 1st magnitude. So these stars, so Vega's a couple of times, a factor of 2 or so brighter, or a factor of 3 brighter than Deneb and Altair. So it's definitely the bright star. And it will pass for me here in Decorah, Iowa. Vega will pass almost directly overhead as it moves across the sky. So it's a really bright star that gets high into the sky. About 23 degrees separate Deneb and Vega. More or less 2 fist widths held out at arm's length like that will separate those. Probably a little bit more than that. 2.5 fist widths to get from Deneb to Vega. It's even a bigger step down here to Altair. Vega to Altair is about 34 degrees, so about 3.5 fist widths for you probably to get from Vega to Altair. So it is a big triangle, big bright triangle. As it gets hazy in the summer, a lot of the fainter stars get to be harder to see, and this triangle really pops. So a lot of times as we get into July, a lot of times that we get a moisture in the air, it gets really hazy, and this triangle stands out. You understand why people talk about this triangle. But there is, for me, often a 4th component down here. And this is the Alpha star, the brightest star in Ophiuchus. Rasalhague, it's called sometimes. And it's about 30 degrees, more or less south of Vega, and about 33 degrees west. And did I say west for Altair earlier when I meant east? Anyway, more or less west of Altair, south and west of Altair. So you've got this triangle of its own down here, sort of quadrilateral if you add it to the other, little bit of a diamond shape if you add it to the other 4 stars, the other 3 stars to make a 4th star here to give you this diamond shape. This star is a 2nd magnitude star, so it's noticeably fainter than these other 3 stars, but still brighter than most of the other stars in the region. So these stars really pop, and this star adds to it sometimes. So we see these 4 stars as a quadrilateral in the sky, forming the summer quadrilateral, let's call it, with Rasalhague down here to the south and the west. And so you can see this is more, the 3 stars, Vega, Altair, Rasalhague, that form this part of the bottom of the quadrilateral, form more of an equilateral triangle. About 33 degrees separate these stars, 34 these stars, and 30 these stars. So this is more of an equal-sided triangle down here than you have up here. The space from Deneb to Altair is pretty large compared to some of the other spaces up there. So so you can see if you can find that. So that gives us the top of Ophiuchus. This is way up north, and Ophiuchus spreads to the south here. And we'll spend some time talking about Ophiuchus this summer. So find your stars of the summer triangle. Go out just after dark, 10 o'clock right now. You got a good dark sky. You should be able to see all of these stars having risen into the sky. If you have any trouble, if you're far enough north, you might have a little trouble with Altair at that time. You have to look down on the horizon pretty well, but I think you'll be able to see it. Certainly by 11 or midnight, you'd be able to see Altair cleanly into the sky in the summer triangle where you start to be well placed. And then find Alpha Ophiuchus down here, Alpha Ophiuchi down here to add that to it. Now there's one more thing we want to look at before we give up on this for this week. This is a great for the entire month of June. And what we want to look at here, if you take the line that connects Deneb to Vega, okay, that should be a line that's relatively easy for you to find, and you slide on down this direction, what you'll find is that line will tip right below. You'll see Rasalhague is well south of that line, but this line tips just the bottom edge of what's called the Keystone of Hercules. Okay, so the keystone is this 4 stars right here in Hercules, and these 4 stars are all closer to 3rd magnitude stars. So these are 1st, 0th, and 1st magnitude stars up here, 2nd magnitude star, 3rd magnitude stars. We're getting significantly fainter here. Still relatively easy to see with dark skies, but significantly fainter. And this is a smaller group of stars. For example, about 7.5 degrees separates those 2 stars right there. Compare that, it's about 3 times less separation than what separates Deneb and Vega as you slide down here. So move on out this direction and see if you can come to these 4 stars that are 3rd magnitude stars that form Hercules. Now Hercules has legs that you'll see down this direction and arms up this direction as well. I've not added them to this drawing for clarity purposes. I assume it's still very unclear to you. But nonetheless, you can look for these legs too. I have to admit, Hercules is one of these interesting objects for me that has more or less plagued me over the years. I've been observing it for 40 years now, 40 plus years. And it's very, very interesting constellation in that sometimes I walk out and pop, there it is. I see it immediately, and it's the most obvious constellation in the world for me. And other times, for whatever reason, I know perfectly well where it is in the sky. I've seen it 1,000 times. And but sometimes I walk out and I just can't lock in on those 4 stars of the body of Hercules, and it takes me a long time. I always eventually find it, but for some reason my mind just doesn't see that pattern, and I assume it's because the stars are getting a little bit fainter here at 3rd magnitude, and so they're starting to blend into some of the other stars in the region just a little bit more. They still are brighter, and it still shouldn't, to my mind, it shouldn't be as hard as it is for me sometimes. I have no idea why sometimes I walk out and see it, boom, there it is, and I think, well, how could I ever have any problem finding that pattern of stars? And other times I walk out and let's blame it on fatigue. We'll blame everything on fatigue. And to say that's it's a little bit harder to find, but June is the right time. It's very high in the sky all night. You go out late at night, you go out 11 o'clock at night, and look up, and Hercules should be very high overhead for the entire month of June. So spend the month of June looking for Hercules. See if you can find Rasalhague. See if you can find Hercules. And once you find Hercules, remember about 7.5 degrees separate those stars. So we're talking about a square here, square-ish thing here, with 7 or 8 degrees on a side. But once you find it, the 2 stars on the western edge of Hercules here, M13 is a big, bright globular cluster. We've talked a little bit about globular clusters before, And we'll talk more about them because summer is the right time to see them. So we're going to spend some time hunting globular clusters this summer. This is the biggest, brightest one there is in the northern hemisphere. This is the one you want to go out and see. And it's about exactly 1/3 of the way down from the top star to the bottom star on the right side, the west side of the north to south, west side of the body of Hercules right here. And so that's about 2.5 degrees from that star and about 4.5 degrees from this star. I think is really what it is. And so it's right on that line that connects them two. If you got binoculars, it will pop in binoculars. So get a good pair of binoculars, see if you can find globular cluster M13. If you've got a small telescope, this we talked about, I think it was just last week, we talked about finding galaxies in Leo and what how you could use stars to hop to get there. And this week is another object that's pretty easy to hop to in a small telescope because it is so much on the line that connects those two stars. And it's about 1/3 of the way down. So you just slowly scroll from the top star toward the bottom star and you'll bump into M13. If you have a wide enough field of view, if you have a low enough power eyepiece in your telescope, you might be able to just barely get this star out of the field of view when the globular cluster pops into the field of view. And certainly in binoculars, you should be able to see both of these objects in the same field of view to help you locate them. So that's your task this week. Start to familiarize yourself with the stars of the summer triangle. We're going to look at them again and again this summer. They're very big and bright. There are markers of summer. They're the stars we use to find other things in the summer sky. And we're going to start this week. We're going to use them to find Rasalhague, Ophiuchus, the brightest star in Ophiuchus down here. And then we're going to try to find the body of Hercules, the Keystone of Hercules. And if we can do that, then we're going to try to find globular cluster M13. So a lot to work on this week, but it's good for the whole month and actually into July. So the months of June and July, everything we're talking here. So it's something to practice over the next 7, 8, 9 weeks. So you got plenty of time to work on this. Have fun with it. Go out and hope you have some clear skies. We've had some clear skies lately for the first time in a while. It looks like we have a few clear skies in our near future. So good luck with the observing summer triangle, Rasalhague, Hercules, M13. Have a good week, everybody. We'll talk to you with something new next week.